The red light from dying stars shone on the tall crystal towers of Veltar Prime. High Commander Thexlan stood at his window, looking out into the dark space. His empire had once ruled 47 star systems, but now it was falling apart. An enemy they could not understand was destroying everything. Commander, his aide rushed in, his tentacles shaking with fear. The Void Swarm has eaten another sector. 3 billion people are gone. Thexlan closed all 4 of his eyes. He felt tired and defeated. Their best weapons did nothing against this enemy. The plasma cannons that could destroy planets were useless. The energy shields that had protected them for thousands of years meant nothing. The swarm just ate everything and grew stronger. "Sir, what do we do?" asked the aide. Thexlan was quiet for a long time. He knew there was only one choice left. But it was dangerous. Very dangerous. "Call the High Council," he said slowly. "Tell them to prepare the eternal summons." His aide's tentacles went stiff with shock. "Sir, you cannot mean that. The ritual is forbidden. It has been forbidden for 10,000 years. "I know what it is," Thexlan said firmly. "But we have no choice. Our people are dying. Our worlds are gone. If we do nothing, we will all be dead in a month." The High Council met in the ancient chamber, deep under the palace. The 12 members sat in a circle around the old ritual platform, where their faces showed fear and worry. They had all heard the stories about the eternal summons. "This is madness," said Council Leader Vexmar. "The ritual calls to the First Ones. They are beings older than time itself. They are like gods to us. We do not know what they will want in return. The stories say they can destroy whole galaxies. If they are angry," added another council member. Thexlan stood in the center of the circle. "Yes, it is dangerous. Look around you. Our empire is already being destroyed. Half our worlds are gone. The swarm grows stronger every day. Soon, it will reach our home worlds. Then what? We all die anyway." The council members looked at each other. They knew he was right. They had tried everything else. Their armies were beaten. Their scientists had no answers. Their allies had already run away or been destroyed. "Very well," said Vexmar. "We will. Do the ritual. But if this brings doom upon us all, it will be on your head, Thexlan." The ritual chamber was very old. The walls were covered with symbols that no one could read anymore. The platform in the center was made of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Council members placed strange crystals around the edges. The crystals began to glow with a cold blue light. Thexlan stepped onto the platform. Power building around him, the air itself seemed to buzz with energy. He had studied the old words for weeks, practicing them until he could say them perfectly. "We call upon the Cedars of Life," he began, his voice growing stronger. "The shepherds of worlds. The first ones who scattered consciousness across the stars." The crystals glowed brighter. The platform began to hum with power. Some of the council members stepped back in fear. "Our empire dies," Thexlan continued. "Our people fade. Beseech, they save us from the darkness that devours all." The light from the crystals suddenly blazed so bright that everyone had to close their eyes. The humming became so loud it hurt their ears. Then, just as suddenly, everything went quiet and dark. The council members stood in silence, waiting. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. "Did it work?" whispered one of them. "I do not know," Thexlan replied. "The old book said the first ones would answer if they chose to, but they said nothing about how long it would take." Then, a soft beeping sound came from Thexlan's communicator. He looked down at the small device on his wrist. There was a message waiting. "What does it say?" asked Vexmar. Vexmar read the message aloud. Received. "Analyzing threat. Deployment in 72 hours. Earth Defense Coordination." The council members looked confused. "Earth," said Vexmar. "What kind of name is that for a god?" "I do not know," Thexlan admitted, but they answered. "The first ones answered our call. But what kind of gods call themselves? Earth Defense Coordination?" asked another council member. "Sounds so ... ordinary." Excellent. Again, something about it bothered him. The words were simple and direct. There was no majesty in them, no divine power. It sounded like a military report. Perhaps he said slowly, "We should prepare for their arrival. They are coming to help us. We should be ready." "What if they are not what we expect?" asked Vexmar. Vexlin looked out at the dying stars again. "Then we will face whatever comes. But at least we will not face it alone." The message had been received. In 72 hours, they would learn what kind of gods they had summoned, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days passed slowly. Vexlin spent most of his time staring at the scanner screens, waiting for the gods to arrive. He imagined great ships made of light, or maybe vessels that bent space itself. The first ones would surely come in glory that matched their power. Commander called his sensor operator. "I am detecting ships coming out of hyperspace." Rush to the main viewing screen. "Show me." What he saw made his 4 eyes blink in confusion. The ships dropping out of hyperspace looked normal. Too normal. There were cargo vessels that looked like they had been used to haul rocks, mining ships with big drills still attached, industrial platforms that looked like floating factories. "Sir," said the sensor operator, "these ships are very old. Some of them have been rebuilt many times. They do not look like warships." Admiral Nexstar joined them at the viewing screen. He was the best military commander in the fleet, but now he looked confused and worried. "These are your gods?" he asked, his voice high with disbelief. "They look like like garbage haulers." The lead ship was especially disappointing. It was clearly an old or hauler that someone had stuck weapons onto. The weapons did not even look very advanced. They looked simple and crude. "Incoming message," announced the communications officer. "Put it through," Vexlin said. A voice came through the speakers. It was calm and businesslike. "This is the Earth vessel, Steady Progress, requesting permission to dock. We are here to assist with your situation." Vexlin looked at Admiral Nexstar. They both felt the same confusion. Where was the divine majesty? Where was the cosmic power? "Permission granted," Vexlin replied. "Dock at Bay 7. They went to the docking bay to meet these supposed gods. Vexlin wore his best ceremonial armor. Admiral Nexstar brought a guard of honor. They expected to need special equipment to look upon divine beings. The airlock opened with a simple hiss. What came out were the most ordinary-looking creatures Vexlin had ever seen. They walked on 2 legs like some species he knew. They had pale skin and hair on their heads. Each had only 2 eyes, which seemed very limiting. They wore simple gray uniforms with patches and symbols that meant nothing to him. No glowing armor, no energy fields, no signs of cosmic power at all. The first one to speak was a female with dark hair tied back in a simple style. "I am Commander Kimsu," she said in a clear voice. "We are here about your swarm problem." Vexlin stared at her. She was shorter than he was. She looked like she could be hurt by a simple plasma bolt. Her uniform was practical but not impressive. She carried no visible weapons. "You are the gods," he asked carefully. "The first ones?" Kimsu looked confused. "Gods, no. We are humans from Earth. We received your message about the Void Swarm. We came to help." "But the ritual," Vexlin said. "The eternal summons. We called upon the first ones." "I do not know about any ritual," Kimsu replied. "We just got your distress call through our deep space monitoring network. It sounded like you had a serious problem." Admiral Nexstar stepped forward. "The Void Swarm cannot be defeated. It has destroyed civilizations for thousands of years. Our best weapons do nothing to it. Our strongest shields cannot stop it." Another human, a male with short black hair, was looking at a small device in his hand. "We looked at your tactical data during the trip here," he said. "Parkman," he added, pointing to himself. "The swarm is interesting. It has a collective consciousness and feeds on energy. It makes copies of itself through quantum tunneling. We have not seen this exact type before, but the basic ideas are familiar." "Familiar?" Veslin's voice went high. "How can it be familiar? It is unique in the galaxy. It is unstoppable." Parkman shrugged. "On Earth, we have many organisms that work in similar ways. Viruses, bacteria, some insects. The principles are the same. just on a bigger scale. Kim Soo was not even paying attention to the conversation anymore. She was talking into a small communicator. Lena, start the industrial printers and make kinetic penetrators. Oh, June, I want gravity mappers set up in shells around their main worlds. And someone get me detailed scans of how this swarm reproduces. More humans were coming through the airlock. They carried boxes of equipment and started setting up machines. They moved with purpose and efficiency, like they had done this many times before. What are you doing? Asked Thexlin. Setting up command centers. Kim Soo replied without looking up from her work. We will need to coordinate our response across multiple systems. This is going to take some planning. Within just a few hours, the humans had taken over 3 of the space stations. They installed their own computers and communication systems. They worked quickly and quietly, turning the stations into busy command centers. Thexlin watched them work. They treated the cosmic horror that had destroyed half his empire like it was just another job. They acted like engineers fixing a broken machine. Commander Kim Soo, he said when she finally had a moment to talk. What makes you think you can succeed where we have failed? She looked up from her screens full of data and battle plans. Her expression was calm and confident. Because we do not fight enemies, she said simply. We solve problems. The first test came at Kethvel, a small mining colony on the edge of Zephyrian space. It was not an important place, just a few thousand miners pulling metals from asteroids. But the void swarm was moving toward it, and everyone knew what that meant. We should evacuate, said Colony Administrator Jexstar over the communication link. The swarm will be here in 6 hours. There's no point in staying to die. Negative, replied Kim Soo from her command ship. We need to see how they fight. This is our chance to learn. Dexlin watched the preparation from his flagship. The humans had been working for 2 days straight, and he still did not understand what they were doing. They had scattered strange devices throughout the asteroid field. They had attached rocket engines to chunks of rock. They had built what looked like simple metal tubes and aimed them at empty space. What are those things? Asked General Vexmar, pointing at the metal tubes. Kinetic accelerators, said human technician Yoon Ha. She was a small woman with short hair who seemed to live at her computer console. We took mining equipment and modified it to throw rocks very, very fast. Rocks. Vexmar sounded confused. You plan to fight the swarm with rocks? Fast rocks, Yoon Ha corrected. When you throw a rock at nearly the speed of light, it hits harder than most bombs. The swarm arrived exactly on schedule. It came as a dark cloud that seemed to eat the light from the stars. The individual creatures were each the size of a small ship, with thick shells and long tentacles that crackled with energy. Thousands of them, moving together like a single organism. They spread out to surround the asteroid field, just like they always did. They expected the usual pattern. The defenders would fire their energy weapons. The swarm would absorb the energy and grow stronger. Then the swarm would consume everything. Instead, the asteroid started moving. Now, said Kim Soo quietly, the kinetic accelerators fired. Chunks of rock, each one accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the leading swarm creatures. The impact was devastating. The creatures that had shrugged off plasma cannons and energy beams were torn apart by simple rocks moving at relativistic speeds. The swarm reacted quickly. The surviving creatures grew thicker shells, harder armor. Their carapaces became dense, enough to stop the kinetic weapons. They adapted, said Vexmar with despair. They always adapt. Now, your weapons will not work. Watch and learn, said Yoon Ha, her fingers dancing over her controls. The second wave of attacks came from different weapons. Nuclear-tipped harpoons launched from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field. These did not rely on speed alone. They punched through the thickened armor and exploded inside the creatures. The swarm adapted again. They developed energy fields that could deflect the harpoons. They spread out more, making themselves harder targets. The humans switched tactics again. This time, they used the creature's own energy absorption against them. Overloaded reactors, designed to be absorbed by the swarm, turned into massive bombs when the creatures tried to feed on them. How? Demanded Vexmar, staring at the tactical display. How do you counter their adaptations so quickly? Takes us months to develop new weapons. You do it in hours. Gunha looked up from her console. Yeah. We have been fighting adaptive enemies. For thousands of years. Bacteria, viruses, each other. The key is staying ahead of their evolution curve. What followed was like watching a masterclass in warfare. Every time the swarm changed, the humans were ready with a counterchange. The creatures developed better armor, so the humans used acid weapons. The creatures adapted to resist acid, so the humans used gravity weapons that crushed them from the inside. The creatures learned to resist gravity, so the humans used quantum disruptors that prevented them from tunneling through space. They're recording everything, observed Vexlin, watching the human ships. Every attack, every defense, every adaptation. They are learning as fast as the swarm. Faster, corrected Kim Soo. We are not just learning, we are predicting. Our computers are running simulations of what the swarm will do next, and we are preparing counters before they make the changes. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the entire swarm force was destroyed. Not a single creature escaped. The asteroid field was littered with debris, but the mining colony was safe. Impossible, whispered Vexmar. The swarm has never been completely defeated. Some always escape to reproduce and return stronger. Not this time, said Yunha, with satisfaction. We made sure to get all of them. The humans had not just won a battle. It demonstrated something that shocked the Zephyrians to their core. The Void Swarm, which had seemed unstoppable for thousands of years, was just another problem to be solved. Your species, Vexlin said to Kim Soo, you do not fight like soldiers, you fight like scientists. Kim Soo smiled. The swarm is very good at adapting, but they follow patterns. Once you understand the patterns, you can predict them. Once you can predict them, you can beat them. The victory at Kethval was just the beginning. The humans had learned how to fight the swarm, and now they were ready to take the war to the enemy. The final battle came to Veltar Prime, the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Every living soul in the system knew this would be the end of everything. Either the humans would succeed, or the swarm would consume the last free worlds in the galaxy. The swarm arrived like a nightmare made real. It was bigger than anything anyone had ever seen before. Dark cloud that stretched across space, so thick it blocked out the stars. Sir, said sensor operator Jung Mi, her voice calm despite what she was seeing. I count 2 billion individual entities. The total biomass is equivalent to a small moon. Vexlin felt his heart stop. 2 billion creatures. His entire empire had maybe 10 million warships, and most of those were already destroyed. How could anyone fight something so large? Kim Soo stood at the center of the human command station. She looked small and fragile compared to the massive display. The humans had been preparing for weeks, but they had kept their plans secret. But he could not understand the pattern. Now he began to see what they had been doing. The swarm was moving in its usual formation, spreading out to surround the planet. But as it moved, it was being guided by invisible forces. Paths. They are hurting them, said Admiral Nexstar with amazement. The creatures found themselves channeled into narrow corridors of space. They tried to spread out, but the gravity wells forced them into tighter and tighter groups. They were being funneled into what looked like empty space. Kinetic impactors, arriving in 10 seconds, announced Jung Mi. The empty space suddenly filled with death. Arrived at precisely calculated moments. They had been traveling through space for so long that they had reached incredible speeds. The impact was devastating. The swarm formations that had seemed unstoppable were shattered in seconds. Millions of creatures were destroyed in the first wave of impacts. But the swarm was learning. It began to adapt, spreading out more, changing its approach patterns. The surviving creatures grew thicker armor and developed better formation tactics. Phase 2, said Kim Soo calmly. New weapons activated. Energy beams that the humans had, kept hidden, began firing from concealed positions. But these were not like the energy weapons the Zephyrians used. These beams did not try to destroy the creatures directly. Instead, they seemed to pass through them without doing any damage. Are those weapons doing? Asked Vexlin. quantum viral transmission, replied human technician Lena. Ah, we are not shooting at their bodies.
Yes.
We are shooting at their minds. Ixtlan did not understand. Their minds? The swarm has a collective consciousness, Lena explained. The creatures share the same thoughts, makes them very strong because they can coordinate perfectly. But it also makes them vulnerable. How? Because if you can infect the collective consciousness with the right kind of virus, it spreads to every creature at once. On the display screen, something strange was happening. The swarm creatures were slowing down. They seemed confused, uncertain. The virus is working, said Jung-mi. It is disrupting their ability to communicate with each other. But that was just the beginning. As the minutes passed, the effect grew stronger. The creatures began to act more and more erratically. Some stopped moving entirely. Others began flying in circles. Then came the horror. They are attacking each other, gasped Admiral Nexter. It was true. The swarm creatures, which had always worked together in perfect unity, were now turning on each other. They were using their energy weapons and claws against their own kind. How is this possible? Asked Thexlin. Lina was monitoring the viruses' progress on her screens. The quantum virus is rewriting their recognition protocols. Each creature now sees the others as foreign threats instead of allies. Their own unity is destroying them. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted only 47 minutes. The swarm that had taken thousands of years to grow across the galaxy destroyed itself in less than an hour. The creatures fought each other with the same ruthless efficiency they had once used against their enemies. When it was over, the space around Veltar Prime was filled with debris. Billions of creatures were dead, killed by their own kind. The swarm that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was extinct. Status report, said Kim Soo. Complete success, replied Jung-mi. No surviving entities detected. The swarm is gone. Thexlin stared at the screens in stunned silence. The humans had not just defeated the swarm, they had made it defeat itself. They had turned the creature's greatest strength into their fatal weakness. How? He whispered. How did you know this would work? Kim Soo was already preparing orders for the cleanup operation because we studied them. We learned how they think, how they communicate, how they see the world. Once we understood their collective consciousness, we could design a virus to disrupt it. But to make them attack each other, ... Every organism has weaknesses, Kim Soo said simply. The swarm's weakness was that they trusted each other completely. We used that trust against them. The war was over. The galaxy was safe. And the humans had done it all with simple engineering and careful planning. 6 months had passed since the swarm died. The galaxy was safe, but everything had changed. On worlds across the Zephyrian Empire, new buildings were rising. But these were not the temples and shrines that Dexlin had expected. They are libraries, he explained to a gathering of alien ambassadors. Research centers, schools. The humans refused to let us build temples to honor them. The ambassadors looked confused. Representatives from dozens of species had come to learn about the humans who had saved them all. They expected to hear about new gods to worship. They do not want worship, Dexlin continued. They want trade agreements and scientific exchanges. They want to share knowledge. Ambassador Carlton from the hegemony leaned forward. But surely, they must want something. Power? Territory? Resources? They want us to learn, Dexlin said simply. They want us to be able to solve our own problems next time. The human diplomatic office was led by a woman named Choi Young. She was polite but firm about what the humans wanted. She had established embassies on 12 worlds, but they were not like normal embassies. They were more like schools. We are not gods, she had said during the formal treaty signing. Gods exist to be worshipped. We exist to solve problems. We are not interested in worship. We're interested in making things work. The humans shared their technology freely. They taught their methods to anyone who wanted to learn. They seemed genuinely puzzled when people tried to treat them as divine beings. Why do you bow? Choi Young had asked, a Zephyrian scientist. I am just a person with knowledge. Take the knowledge and use it to help your people. The changes were remarkable. Zephyrian military academies stopped teaching energy weapon tactics and started teaching kinetic warfare. Their scientists stopped trying to build bigger plasma cannons and started studying human approaches to problem solving. Most importantly, they learned to think differently about challenges. Instead of seeing impossible problems as proof that they needed divine help, they began to see them as puzzles waiting to be solved. The humans taught us something simple, General Vexmore explained to his officers. Every problem has a solution. You just need to understand the problem well enough to find it. News of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the swarm now spoke of the Earth solvers in quiet voices, not as gods, but as something that was both more practical and more frightening. They were a species that simply refused to accept defeat. The requests for help began arriving within weeks. The Velkar Republic was dealing with a machine uprising. Their artificial servants had gained consciousness and were demanding rights. The Velkar military wanted to destroy them all. We would like consultation on our machine problem there. Message read. The human response was typical. We are on our way. The Crystalline Collective had a dying sun. Their home star was burning out faster than it should. Our scientists said it was impossible to fix. Need help with our star, they transmitted to Earth. We are on our way, came the reply. The hive worlds were suffering from a plague that was killing their queen mothers. Without the queens, their entire civilization would collapse. They had tried everything their science could think of. Please help us, they begged. We are on our way. Each request received the same response. The humans did not ask for payment or tribute. They did not demand territory or resources, just came and helped. Dexlin stood in his command center looking at the displays that now used human-designed systems. The old energy screens had been replaced with kinetic tracking systems. The plasma weapon controls had been replaced with gravity well generators. But the biggest change was not in the technology. It was in how his people thought. Sir, said his aide, we are receiving a report from the Outer Rim. There is a new type of space storm that is threatening the mining colonies. The storms were natural phenomena. There was nothing to be done about them except run away. Now he asked a different question. What do we know about these storms? Can we predict them? Can we deflect them? His aide looked surprised for a moment and then began. Pulling up data. We have some preliminary scans. The storms seem to follow magnetic field lines. If we could generate a strong enough counter-dash field, get our scientists working on it, Dexlin ordered, and send a message to the human embassy. Ask if they have any experience with magnetic storm deflection. He smiled to himself. The humans had not just saved the galaxy. They had taught it to save itself. Later that day, Dexlin went to the deepest archives of Veltar Prime. He accessed the historical records and made a final entry about the swarm. War. They called for their gods, he wrote. Earth became their reckoning, not through divine power, through the most terrifying force in the universe. Intelligent persistence applied to problems that others deemed unsolvable. He paused, thinking about how to end the entry. The humans did not come as gods. They came as humans, and that made all the difference. They showed us that the universe is not full of impossible problems. It is full of problems that no one has solved yet. The galaxy will never be the same, and that is a good thing. Outside his window, the stars shone brightly. Somewhere among them, human ships were traveling to help species they had never met, solve problems they had never seen. Age of Gods was over. The Age of Solutions had begun.